right, so we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, Autodesk BIM Collaborate Pro. Okay, it's the civil sort of related workflow inside of the ACC, which is the Autodesk Construction Cloud. All right, and kind of what I'm going to talk about as we go through the webinar is what things look like in the local environment, how that kind of transitions to the cloud environment. We'll look at the web interface a little bit and how to manage the projects through the web. We'll talk about how things operate and exist in Civil 3D. I'm going to talk about data shortcuts in Xrefs, which is kind of the reason you're going to need BIM Collaborate Pro, as well as sheet sets, and then some nuances related to printing. And if we have enough time, we'll talk about how you can compare documents in the cloud, as well as make markups on some of those documents in the cloud.
So quickly before Corey dives into the meat of the webinar on ABC Pro for Civil, I want to give some background to the folks out there that aren't familiar with TPM. So TPM, we're celebrating our 50th year in business, serving AEC and manufacturing clients with industry-leading technology solutions. So for the AEC folks, Autodesk, Bluebeam, Leica hardware, as well as our CRM system that we've developed in-house called Treblehook. Also, in the document and print solutions world, we have, we're an HP and Canon partner. And then you can see down in the manufacturing space with DriveWorks, SolidWorks, some of the 3D printing technology, Markforged 3D systems, as well as 3D scanning with the Artec. And then our color lab, doing graphics, interior and exterior, trade show, vehicle wraps, all the good things for marketing, our TPM color lab can handle. So again, for those that aren't familiar with TPM, this is a few of the things we do, offering multiple solutions within the AEC and manufacturing industries.
So before we get into the actual workflow, we want to talk about, how does my workflow exist today? What am I doing today in my current scenario, in the local world, versus how things will look if I move to the cloud, okay? And so for a new project, all right, that project's going to be authored in Civil 3D. Just like it is today, you'll start a file in Civil 3D. If you're going to move into the ABC Pro workflow, what you're going to do from that point is actually save that file in what's called Autodesk Docs. And that Autodesk Docs is going to use what's called the desktop connector to sync to the cloud. Now, if you have the AEC collection, you will have access to Civil 3D, you'll have access to Docs, and you could even download the desktop connector. And you could get files in the cloud through Docs and the desktop connector, all right? Now, the difference maker here for ABC Pro is that ABC Pro is going to allow those files to communicate with each other, all right? And in the Civil 3D workspace and the civil engineering world, you're going to really need your files to communicate, all right? Because more often than not, you're going to be using data shortcuts, Xrefs, or sheet sets. So if you have the collection, you have sort of 75% of what you need to get into the cloud. But if you're using data shortcuts and Xrefs, sheet sets, then you're going to need to add on ABC Pro, okay? And so for a new project, that's kind of how things will work. Authored in Civil 3D, saved in Docs, synced through the desktop connector into the cloud. Now, if you have an existing project that you want to bring into the cloud, that project would have been authored in Civil 3D, but currently it's probably going to be saved through Windows File Explorer onto your network or onto your local machine. Okay, so what you're going to have to do with those existing files is you're going to have to upload those files to ABC Pro into the cloud. And then from there on, you can use the desktop connector to sync those files. Okay, and so you will have to reorganize and reset up those files once you get them in the cloud, because some of your links and things will be broken as you're moving from the local world to the cloud. So it's going to be easier to start a new project in the cloud, but it's not impossible to take an existing one into ABC Pro and into the cloud. Okay, so I'm going to get out of PowerPoint for a second. All right, so what I want to look at first is the actual website of things, okay? And so when you're in the cloud, this is through the ACC, the Autodesk Construction Cloud. I'm logged in through my account, okay? As a company, we'll have what's called a hub in the cloud, okay? And that's where all of our projects are going to be stored. And you'll see everything is sort of stored here, built on Docs, Okay, so I have this project in the cloud, this example project, collaboration for civil, and inside of that project, I'll have folders. Okay, and those folders are going to be intended for my project files, and I can have whatever file structure I want to mimic my local file storage and the way my projects are set up locally. But these files will be created in the cloud for your project. Okay. And so then from there, what you can do is take your DWGs, okay, and have those stored in here as well. Okay, if that's a new project, you would save them through Docs, as I mentioned, into this folder. It'll automatically take it to the cloud. And I'll show you what that looks like on the Civil 3D side. If it's an existing project, you'll see here you have the option to go ahead and upload files from your local storage. Okay. Those DWGs will end up here in the cloud. All right. You'll see also I have a section in here for data shortcuts, sheet sets, and I even have a section here for CAD standards. Okay, so you're going to want to have your standards and an example sheet set in the cloud somewhere if you want to use sheet sets, as well as if you want to print through these files. So if you want to print these files using ABC Pro, you're going to actually need to have your plot styles up here in the cloud. Okay. So that's kind of on the web side, and I'll talk a little bit more about what exists in the web when we talk about document comparison and marking these files up. Okay. Now on the local side of things, okay, a couple things I want to show you there. In Civil 3D itself, okay, this is going to look standard for you, but if you were to say look at the Start menu, the file I'm in the Advanced Surface as well as Proposed Design, you'll see that those files have a little cloud symbol. Okay, so that's letting you know that these files are actually being stored in the cloud. When I hover here, you'll see the path to these files. Okay, and I can show you what that looks like on the Windows File Explorer side of things as well. But you can quickly see these files are actually in the cloud. Now, when I get in one of them, what you're going to notice when I look at the tool space, okay, is that there's a cloud symbol next to the file in tool space. So these are both the files I have open for my master view. Okay, and then your data shortcuts will also be tied to the cloud. Okay, I fixed this earlier. Let me fix that again. So this guy is actually going to be through Docs. So you'll see on your left side here, you have Autodesk Docs. And inside of your Autodesk Docs, you'll be communicating with your hub. Okay, and here's that XS collab for civil. Okay, and I have my project files, and then my drawing files, and then my data shortcuts here. Okay, so my data shortcuts will actually be stored in the cloud as well. Now that folder I just showed you, okay, you can actually see that folder in Windows File Explorer as well. Okay, so if I go to File Explorer, there's my Docs folder. Okay, so it's going to show up over here just like OneDrive or this PC, what have you. And here's that same ACC folder, and there's that XS collab for civil and those project files. Okay, so these are the same files I would have seen through the web interface showing up in my Windows File Explorer. Okay, and you can kind of see the cloud symbol there, letting you know this information is coming from the cloud. Okay, the files I'm in, you'll see that they're locked. Okay, so there is the file locking, component to it, to where it knows I'm in that file. Not only does it know I'm in that file through Windows File Explorer, but if I look back on the web, okay, and I look at that file, let me go to my drawing files here, and okay, there should be a file lock symbol. That's where, there it is in the cloud. So that's letting me know that my file is actually locked. So you can actually see that through the web as well, and who was locked by. Okay. All right. As I save these files, they're going to version up. Okay, so you'll see here this one's got V2, that's got V4. So every time I save and sync back to the cloud, it will version the files up. All right, nice thing about that is that if I click on one of the versions, I'd actually see the previous versions. Okay, so there they are. And you'll see here I could even compare versions if I wanted to. All right, so for say the proposed design. Let's do here on the proposed surface here. All right, the current one is there, and you'll see the rest of them here, and I could actually compare a version if I wanted to. I'm not sure how different these guys are, but let's see. Okay. All right, so showing those, and then I'm gonna go ahead and compare. Let's see if we can kind of, okay, zoom in here. Okay, so one version is gonna show up red. If it was different on the other version, then it would show up as blue. Okay, you can kind of turn one off and see the other one, and then turn that guy back on. Okay, so it allows you to kind of see what exists in one versus what exists in the other file. Okay, you can see some of the common areas are going to show up black, but then if I turn one off, I can see everything in red from the one revision, and then everything in blue here for the other revision. Okay, and that's for the CAD file. So it's looking at the DWG and doing that comparison. All right. All right, so back to the local world here for a second. All right, so that's your data shortcuts. The same thing's going to exist on your Xrefs. Okay, the path for those Xrefs, as you'll notice here, are just going to be cloud paths. So it's going to use that docs to talk to that ACC hub, and then it's going to look at that XX collaboration for civil project and find that Xref from the cloud. Okay, so this Xref is actually stored in the cloud that I'm looking at here. Right. Now, one of the major differences and one of those things that Autodesk had to improve since this software first came out, you know, the collaboration piece came out around 2019, but since then Autodesk has made some improvements, and the major area that it made improvements was in sheet sets. Okay. Because they were having some issues with sheet sets actually working and communicating properly. Okay. So when it comes to sheet sets, the way they kind of remedied the issues they were having was to completely have those sheet sets stored in the cloud. Okay. And so what you're going to do is you're going to end up, when you create a new sheet set, you're going to see here in the later versions of the software, I'm in 2024, is that you'll have the option to create your sheet set from a cloud example sheet set. Okay. And that's why I was mentioning in the cloud, you're going to want to have an example saved in sort of a template file in the cloud, so that if I click on this button, then I can go ahead and go through the process of creating my sheet set, and I can actually pull my sheet set down from the cloud. Okay. So I'll end up accessing that cloud location where I have my sheet set, and I think I have it. Let me make sure I have it here. Okay. I think I have it in DWG and CAD standards. So there's an example sheet set, and I can use that guy to actually create my sheet set. And then I just have to give my sheet set a name and where I want to store it. Okay. And so then it's going to pull from that example sheet set to create my sheet set. Okay. And like I mentioned, that sheet set's just going to reside in the cloud. It's not even going to have a local version of it. It'll just live in the cloud so that it can constantly communicate with that sheet set from the cloud. That's one of the major differences in your workflow, is that your sheet set is going to live in the cloud, and you're going to have that example in the cloud. The only other difference that really exists from the local to the cloud is your printing, right? As I mentioned earlier, you're going to want to have your plot styles in the cloud as well, and be able to pull from the cloud for your plot styles. Okay. So when I look at my printer support path information and things like that, I can have these guys communicate with the cloud as well. Okay, so I can pull my cloud location for my printers. Okay, and so that we can use that information to print in the cloud. All right. So the other thing I wanted to show you from the cloud was the ability to mark up documents. Okay. So in the cloud, we can go ahead and print to PDF and store our PDFs in the cloud. And so we'll have a folder in the cloud, maybe say Construction Docs. Okay. Stored in the cloud. And then these will be a list of PDFs. Okay. And I print it straight to this location from the software. Okay. And so I can go ahead and access a PDF. And so now that I'm in the PDF, okay, I can actually make markups on this plan set. You'll see here I have a little call out style markup there. And you'll see a list of tools over here, like a cloud that I can add to the doc to maybe say I add in an island here, or something like that. Okay, so I can mark that up. You can see here I can also use measurements in the cloud. Okay, so it'll be kind of up to me to kind of set my scale for measurements in the cloud. Okay. So I can do a line measurement and say here, oh, that one didn't take well. Let me adjust that measurement. Okay. And measure that parking space. Okay. All right. So there's a couple of different markup tools we can use. I can add text in the cloud. All right. So you can use this tool to collaborate and ask questions at request to the drawing on this PDF in the cloud. All right. Now, more than likely, you're going to be working either with a contractor, construction company, or you may be collaborating with the architect. Okay. The architects and the contractors have been in the cloud for some time. Okay, so they've been around in the cloud, most of them using BIM 360 or now the Autodesk Construction Cloud for some time. Okay, so the likelihood is that you will probably be able to work with those contractors pretty seamlessly because a lot of them have already been using this software in the cloud. But you can invite them into your hub and have them as a user to access your plans in your hub. Same thing with your drawings. If you want them to have constant access to your DWG, all you do is invite them in and allow them to access whatever information you've added to the cloud. So those are some of the residual sort of benefits of having all your drawings and things in the cloud, is that you can collaborate externally with those folks outside of your company in the cloud. As I mentioned, these are just folders. Okay, so you can have not only just PDFs and CAD files in the cloud, but you could put your Excel files or Word files or whatever it is you can have hosted and saved in the cloud, and then have those externally have sort of constant access to some of those items. Okay. So that's mostly what I want to show you, kind of how things exist in the local space versus how things will end up existing in the cloud for you. What I want to do is I'm going to open up another poll as we check the chat for questions. Feel free to populate the chat with questions as we answer this other poll. All right. So one of the questions I see here is ABC Pro an acronym for Autodesk BIM Collaborate Pro. That is correct, and that is actually the question, or one of the questions I had on here. This other one I'm presenting now is the ACC. So what does the ACC stand for? But yes, ABC Pro is the acronym for Autodesk BIM Collab Pro. So it's been BIM 360 in the past. It was collaboration for Revit at one point, allowing architects to collaborate. And now that it's kind of moving to the civil space, they've sort of rebranded it again, and they're calling it Autodesk BIM Collaborate Pro. What other questions do we have? Other questions, pop those in the chat for us. All right. So I still see a couple of you taking the poll. The poll asked about the ACC. Yeah, so we got a couple more responses, and then we'll answer that question. All right, while we do that and wait on additional questions, I'm going to show you guys some events we have coming up here. All right, so I got another question, topography feature. Trying to figure out what that means. I think maybe you're asking about locally surfaces and things like that. Is that if that's allowed in the cloud? Maybe. The other way I could interpret that is if you're asking about cut and fill. There's no cloud sort of cut fill component for doing, volumes. Locally, you could do that in Civil 3D. In terms of surfaces, those will exist in the cloud as well. So there'll be a data shortcut that'll exist in the cloud. Okay. So that's the way you'll handle that. Okay. I think I see a couple more questions. Let me see if I can get it to where I can actually see them a little bit better. All right, there we go. Will you need to be sharing anything? Oh, will I be sharing anything about the workflow from Civil 3 to Revit and back to topography feature? There we go. Okay. So for Revit, there is a way to do sort of Revit workflow sharing between Civil 3D and Revit. We actually have a video on our YouTube channel about that. It's more so about setting coordinates properly between the two and having your building footprint tied to those coordinates. Okay. But once you get those coordinates set up properly between the two, you can also use it for surfaces as well. We may have a video directly relating to surfaces. I'm not positive about that, but we can follow up to see if there's actually a video on surfaces between Revit and Civil 3D. But we do have one about setting that coordinate system, which kind of gets you into that direction of being able to push information back and forth between Revit and Civil 3D. All right, someone else asks, is this supposed to have already been released, or is this an upgrade to what we have to Pextra for? So depends on what you have. Okay, if you have the AC collection, then you should have access to Docs. That's what I was mentioning, is that Docs itself is available through the collection. All right, but you will need to buy the BIM Collaborate Pro portion of the software. So that will be an add-on to what you have already if you have the collection. If you don't have the collection, you'll need the collection as well as the add-on. So the BIM Collaborate Pro piece, you have to purchase that as well. Yes, there is a option, and this is for Tim's question. His question was, I think there's a feature to publish a topography surface in Civil 3D that can be imported. Yes, there is an export to the cloud option in Civil 3D. Let me see if I can locate that. Let me stop showing the poll right now. To answer the question in the poll asked for what does ACC stand for? It stands for the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Okay, so I'll close that poll and then I can show you. Let me see if I can locate it. Okay, all right, so let me share my screen again. Okay, so inside of Civil 3D, on the Output tab, there is the option to publish surfaces, and I believe this publish surface is kind of what you're going to use to get this surface into the cloud and on the web. Okay, and by doing this, it allows the user to see that surface in the cloud. Now, this guy's not going to per se have the real-time sort of dynamic connection to the cloud to allow you to update that surface and have it automatically update that information in the cloud. Okay, the desktop connector and ABC Pro with the data shortcut is kind of the key to get that those real-time updates into the cloud. But you can push this guy out to the cloud, and it'll push its current state to the cloud. All right. All right, and so yeah, the software is released per se. You just have to purchase that add-on. Okay, so it is available. You just have to purchase the add-on. Right. Let's see if there's any other questions. I think that's all I see so far for questions.